There is a delay in time while getting the banking system established. So Brock, everybody listening, this is not get rich quick. This is not how fast can I get as much cash in and pull as much cash out. Do those things happen? Can those things happen? Yes, but only if you know why you're doing it, and only if you know how you're going to do it and how it's going to make what you're already doing better. And that's where we come in. We get to coach you up and go, well, if you do this, this occurs. If you do this, that occurs. Do you like that? And are you thinking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years into the future? And Brock, I think I'm going to steal
times of like probably the most prolific and thing that's in front of my mind right now is, we're all building for retirement income. And if you've gone down the typical path, majority of your retirement income will be taken from the stock market. And if you're pulling money out of the stock market and the market declines and you continue to pull money out of the market to live your life, you run the risk of running out of money too early. That's called the sequence of returns risk. It's a big problem. And, you've got to be prepared to withstand those down years by adding buffer years or having a volatility buffer so that you can allow those portfolios to.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts, Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Good morning and welcome back to Cashflow Legendz, or good evening, or good afternoon, or good night. Whatever it is when you listen to this, I always say what time we're recording. Fellas, we are recording at a time where we have had some pretty wild weather across the United States as a whole. And it's interesting because just us three here, Nate's 3 hours from me, Brock's 7 or 8 hours from us in Tennessee. Nate hardly got any bad weather that they were calling for. We've gotten a lot of freezing rain, and in East Texas, we don't know how to operate when that occurs, so we completely shut down. So our kids have not been in school all week. And Brock, you guys got a good amount also, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, we had a huge amount. There, I don't know if it's still the case, but there was over 230,000 people without power.
Wow.
Yeah.
My fiance's, I don't know what you call it. What would brother-in-law? Yeah, yep. My brother-in-law and his significant other, they got stuck at their house because trees had fallen, power lines had fallen. They couldn't get out because the power lines were still on while on the road. Everything was ice. And they said it was the wildest thing because it'd be real quiet because there's no power. And all you'd hear is a tree fall, limbs fall, and then a transformer blow. And so, crazy things over the last couple of days. It was super icy. We had a good time. So it's still dangerous. There's still ice everywhere.
One thing that I think about every time that we have bad weather here is, and my wife and I were talking about this morning, is having a plan when things don't go according to plan. And the reality is that almost everything in East Texas is not equipped or prepared or budgeted for weather like we get, because it happens so randomly. I say random. It's normally between January and late February. So I guess we know when it could happen. But, I can count on one hand how many times we've missed multiple days of school over my entire lifetime of being in this town. So it's not often. And do what?
Go ahead.
So as I was thinking about that, this reality hit me that as we get to talk about what we do every day, and we're having a great conversation before we hit record, we're going to be focusing today on Nelson's book in page 69 and 70, which says, but I can get a higher rate of return. And often in our correlation to the bad weather thing, that all sounds great until unexpected weather hits, until power lines start freezing over. And, and how do we connect that? I can think of multiple examples. And Brock,
I've got one too.
Nate's got one. He's over. Nate,
it's spinning in my head. All right.
Nate is like a kid in the corner of the classroom raising his hand. Call on me. Call on me. All right, go ahead, Nate.
So people buy generators not because they know their power is going to go out tomorrow, you know, but I've never met a person that regretted paying for a generator when they needed it.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
why do people install Generacs? Because there's always a chance something's going to go wrong. Doesn't mean that it is going to go wrong, but there's always a chance that something's going to go wrong. And every time that generator kicks in, somebody's like, man, I'm so glad we made that decision.
Yep. I was talking to our pastor yesterday. I swung by their house and picked up their kiddo to come over and stay at the house. We've had a knucklehead of a friend here for about a week straight, living their best life out in the country. And we sat and visited for a minute, and he goes, there's a lot of peace of mind when that Generac kicks on that just makes sure my family's protected. I know things are going to be warm. I don't have to, wonder what we're going to do. And a lot of times I think, Brock, tell me how you would think about this from your typical conversations you have, is we just have this natural tendency to always assume things are going to go swimmingly, on point, no issues, no power allowance frozen, no electricity lost, no trees falling, no water pipes busting. We just think that's just never going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And what's the reality with that? And how would you connect that in general to your conversations with money? Because it's very similar.
I think it's very similar, but something that was on my mind was, so I was at an event and Michael Phelps was speaking to us last week, and he talked about, as he was visualizing his success, he'd also visualize all the things that would go wrong. And so a lot of people don't know that in 2008, one of his gold medal runs, his goggles fell and he swam the entire thing with basically his eyes closed because his goggles were just filling up with water. And so in his visualization, he would always go through, what happens if he didn't have his credentials or his hat broke or whatever it was, which he said all of them did end up happening. But when it occurred, he was a lot more prepared for it as it happened. And so I think it's the same thing in money, is like, if something's going to go wrong, it's likely to go wrong. Like, there's no plan that's perfect and it works out at all times. And reminds me of another time I was listening to this guy named Chris Jarvis and my buddy Justin Donald, one of my mentors, and they were talking about the fact that no plans work out according to plan. Like, they all break at some point. And Justin Donald, massive wealth. Chris Jarvis is an advisor to people who have massive amounts of wealth. And every single time he's like, we have to plan for the unexpected. And that's the same in our financial world. Is, it's kind of like what Nate said, is, nobody rushes to go buy that generator until they really need it. And then they don't care what it really costs. They'll pay for it. And the only problem with that in our financial life is oftentimes we can't do it when we need it. We got to have it beforehand. And I think about the times of, like, probably the most prolific and thing that's in front of my mind right now is, we're all building for retirement income. And if you've gone down the typical path, majority of your retirement income will be taken from the stock market. And if you're pulling money out of the stock market and the market declines and you continue to pull money out of the market to live your life, you run the risk of running out of money too early. That's called the sequence of returns risk. It's a big problem. And, you've got to be prepared to withstand those down years by adding buffer years or having a volatility buffer so that you can allow those portfolios to recover. And so to talk, that was way longer than it needed to be.
No, that's good. You gave me a visual that I really...
It gave me a visual too. Go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, almost all, and this has happened multiple times. I remember in 2020 when we had Snowmageddon, we're coming back from Broken Bow, and we go through different towns and different states, obviously. And some states are much more prepared for the terrible weather than other states. It's because they have experienced it more often, and they planned it in their budget, and they had it in their line items for their city or their county or their state, knowing we're going to have this happen often. Let's go ahead and prepare for it. But I was also thinking we had lots of family members that didn't have access to the ability to get out, didn't have four-wheel drive. And so we became the four-wheel drive chauffeurs. And in East Texas, having a four-wheel drive is not that important all the time unless you're just a back roader, who's always going hunting or something like that. But when you don't have it, you sure wish you did when you need it. And so I was thinking, you may can go get that generator, assuming there's one available, and you can recover. But when I'm 65 or 70 and I decide I am ready to completely shift my season of life, it was all good till it wasn't. I can't always go to that Lowe's or Home Depot shelf and grab 20 years of recovering in the market off the shelf. So now I'm left with the decision. I either ride out what I have, or I do something totally opposite, or I do something I wish I didn't have to do. Because I didn't know I was going to wish I didn't have to do it till I got to that point. So, Nate, I'm going to pass it to you, but I also want to come back to you, Brock, about something that was shared with you at the event about retirement. I'm using air quotes, and shifting in seasons of life. Go ahead, Nate.
The visual that I saw in my head was essentially having three buckets. When we're talking about a sequence of return risk, having three buckets, and one of them has a pinhole leak in it, one of them has two pinhole leaks in it, one of them has three, and the goal is to keep water in the buckets, so to speak. So having the ability, based off of the flow of that water coming out of that, you can you have options as far as how you would keep the water in the buckets, the speed of drawing from one versus drawing from the other, or whatever, the goal being to try to keep water in the buckets. And so, that kind of goes back to a sequence of return risk, where you've got a bucket that's in one instance is leaking faster than the other buckets. So in that case, you don't want to draw from that bucket, because then you're going to draw down on it even more,
All right. If it seemed like Nate cut off a little bit early, we had a few technical difficulties. That's okay. Nate and I live out in the middle of nowhere. We got bad weather, so we're just going to roll with it. So Nate was talking about buckets and the reality of having money flow into different buckets. And Brock, it reminded us before we hit record, you were talking to a friend and a mentor of yours about this specific thing. And I'd really love if you'd walk through the retirement conversation, the aging piece, and kind of what you took away from what Vince said, because it was very insightful.
Yeah, totally. So, when we talk to a lot of people, at the end, yes, we are talking about taking control of your finances. There's a lot of things that we want to accomplish, but at the end of the day, our main goal is how to make sure that when you want to slow down, you can do so with the maximum amount of income and without the fear that you're going to run out of money. That's the ultimate puzzle we're trying to figure everything out with, right? The problem that I think us and a lot of other people run into is the fact that we always have people that say that they're going to work for forever. And that could be the case, right? But, I was talking to one of my mentors, monster producer in the industry, everybody looks up to him. And I was having a real hard dilemma about the class that we were in, and thinking about these people that are just going to work for forever. And he's one of those guys, he's 68 years old. But he was like, listen, my age, with people I work with, I'm starting to get annoyed. I'm a little bored. I don't want to work through this paperwork. I don't want to manage people. I don't want to go through all these things. And he's talking about the people that he's talking to, and some of it on himself is, you're going to get older, and there's going to be things that you want to do more of, whether it's travel, work at a church, whether it's, just go to conferences, whatever it is. We're not saying kick it up at a beach and call it quit.
Nothing. Yeah.
You're able to do things without the worry that you have to do it for income. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that was one phase. But then the other part was I'm 68 years old. And I've got double digits of friends and people in my world that don't get to retire by choice. That was taken away from them because they have things like dementia. When you get things like dementia or Alzheimer's or some sort of thing that comes on as the older you get, you might not have the choice of choosing when you retire. Life chooses it for you. But what you got to know is that you can, at the end of the day, have a retirement income, have a distribution plan, whatever you want to call it, without the fear that you're going to run out of money and that you can sustain the life that you're living.
Yeah. So if we take the connection to Nelson's plan or a page on, but I can get a higher rate of return, and we compare it or connect it to bad weather and unforeseen things, a rate of return matters nada if it's not creating your ability to have freedom of choice and change as you get into later years of life. And Brock, I really love your point of, what if I just want to go volunteer at the church and I don't want them to have to pay me? And I know they don't have to, because my income, my assets are paying the income I need. And I have enough life insurance, as much as I could possibly get, to be sure that all of my loved ones are going to be replenished, reimbursed, however you want to think about it,
right,
upon that day that I graduate, as Nelson called it.
That's right.
And so what I really, Nate, value from reading these 2 pages now compared to when we read it 8 years ago is it's kind of tied into the coaching that we've been around with Brock's dad, Trent, and others that have mentored us, is being aware of what's going on and knowing what you're going to do about it when things are going well is a good thing. It'd be like saying it's nice and sunny outside and we're in June. But last year, I really didn't like that feeling at 44 years young of not having power for 2 weeks or 1 week. I really didn't like that feeling of not being able to get to the gas station because we didn't have 4-wheel drive. I really was uneasy that my loved ones were across, the county, and we couldn't stay connected because there was no way we could get to each other. Those things are true no matter what age of life we're in. We just feel them differently when we get into retirement years in the traditional sense.
Yeah. And, we talk about this rate of return is often a comparison game. And it reminds me of conversations I've had this week with a friend and client in Pennsylvania and another friend and client in Wisconsin. And we are comparing our weather, and they're talking about negative temperatures, which I've never experienced negative temperatures before. But they told me that, once you hit about, this time of year, once you hit about 10, 15 degrees, you might go outside in a t-shirt. And that's like I can't even fathom that. But rate of return is a comparison game, and it doesn't tell the full story, which is what Nelson is trying to get people to understand, is like when you control the banking function, when you control that environment and you are the owner in that environment, there's going to be a level of profitability that you get to experience that others may not get to experience. And there's also, there's going to be growth that happens internally with the policy that doesn't have to be reported or paid to the IRS in terms of the internal growth of the policy. And so, rate of return is oftentimes is not going to tell the full story as far as what's really taking place, because you also have to understand where is the control, where's the certainty, where's the efficiency in that process.
Yep. On that point, there's a line in here that Nelson says that I really like. So he's comparing getting a rate of return in a traditional thought process versus getting a rate of return from borrowing against your policy. And the line that he says here is, in case B, we're forgetting that we are the owner in the banking process. So you move forward a little bit further, and Brocky says, the principle applies to any investment you might make. Any investment. There is no way that a person can get a higher rate of return by ignoring the banking process. And this is the key piece, and this is what I love about what we do. There is a delay in time while getting the banking system established. So Brock, everybody listening, this is not get rich quick. This is not how fast can I get as much cash in and pull as much cash out. Do those things happen? Can those things happen? Yes. But only if you know why you're doing it, and only if you know how you're going to do it and how it's going to make what you're already doing better. And that's where we come in. We get to coach you up and go, well, if you do this, this occurs. If you do this, that occurs. Do you like that? And are you thinking 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years into the future? And Brock, I think I'm going to steal this from you. Let's work backwards from when worst case happens. I know that stinks. I know it's not fun, and pray it never does. But let's work backwards from you're 68 and you can no longer work and you can't think straight. Like, let's work backwards from there. What do you want to be able to say for sure? And we all have stories in relationships. Even Brock's just a baby. I mean that in a loving way, in his 20s, and Nate and I are in our 40s. And Nate and I have parents that are in their 60s and 70s and grandparents in their 80s. This is a normal, everyday conversation. What is crazy is that we act like it's not going to happen. Instead of going, hey, this is going to happen. Good Lord willing, I stay healthy, I stay active, I stay mobile. But if not, what do I want to be able to say? And it really boils down to these simple things for me, Nate and Brock. I want to be sure my family's taken care of. If I'm here and a vegetable, or I'm here and fully active, or I'm no longer here, I want to be able to say that financially their lives are not impacted negatively, because that will allow them to do the other things well, hopefully with the heritage that we've left and instilled in them by living a long time. So we have to really get clear on what Nelson's saying is if you're going to go get a higher rate of return, is it accomplishing what or making steps towards what you want that matters most to you? And Nate, you say this often to members, prospects, and Brock, you probably say some version of this. We ask tough questions, but we're also vetting to see if we're going to be a good fit. Because if you don't want to be asked tough questions, then we're probably not going to be able to help you. Because the questions that we ask often are not questions that get asked on a daily basis by the traditional world. Would you agree with that, Brock?
Quality of questions you ask determines the quality of life you live.
Yeah. So let me tell a true story. Brock does this to me and Nate. So last 7-10 days ago, I am on Brock's schedule. And yes, I get on Brock's schedule because his time is valuable. All right, just like ours is. And I recognize that. And we meet and we're reviewing my cash flow and lack thereof and money going everywhere. And, you know, all these things that are, I'm just being very transparent for everybody listening, that we all deal with. And there's ebbs and flows in it. So I've got to put down my pride and first go, am I comfortable letting Brock see behind the scenes? Well, that takes trust and time and relationship. And I am. Then I have to go, okay, now Brock's going to see behind the scenes. He's not just going to look at what he sees and act like he doesn't see it if there's something that's a concern. So we have had our wills and trust in place, ready to document for a long time. And I teach this every day, guys. And it's like having a lawn company. I used to have one of those. Everybody else's yard looks immaculate. Mine's a mess. All right. So Brock says, well, when are you going to do that? I don't remember how he says it, but only in the way, like a blunt force object that Brock can ask questions where you have no choice but to answer immediately. And he says, you're going to deal with some kind of consequence. What is that going to be if you don't do this by the date you give me? And Brock's not enforcing it. This is on me. Okay. And I tell him what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a $500 check to your favorite charity. And Brock goes, okay. And then he stops and thinks, and he goes, I want you to write a $500 check to the last place you would want to write it. I chose Planned Parenthood because I have a strong feeling against that being a place to send any money. And guess what? Everything's done. Guess what? It was done before the deadline. Guess what? I feel better. And I thought to myself, why did I wait to do that? And the truth is, because we will justify anything we can in our mind to do the thing that's not the thing we know we need to do first, often. But if I'd have let Brock ask me that question a year ago, 2 years ago, if I'd have had him built into my schedule for the accountability, I'm certain it'd already be done. So you want to get around people that will ask you bold questions for your well-being when things are going well. You don't want to have the conversation where Brock's like, do you remember when we talked about that and you wouldn't do it? And now something's happened in life and it's impacted by that. Now, Brock wouldn't do that to me in an ugly way, but like I would do it to myself. So, Nate, when you think about this and you're having these conversations every day, for somebody listening that goes, I'm getting a great rate of return. Let's say they're 35, have a pretty good idea of what they want to accomplish, getting the 401k match, all the things that people say you should get. And they're just bragging on that rate of return. What are some questions that you like to ask to really provoke their thinking while things are going well in a way that's genuine?
Is that a sustainable rate of return, or did you just hit a stride in the market at the time?
Yeah.
Because anytime somebody's getting strong double digits, I'm like, is that really sustainable? I think Garrett even makes the point, somebody who's getting 12% rate of return, if they get that every year, they would have more money than the Federal Reserve one day.
If you read Killing Sacred Cows 2.0, that was a client of mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, a double-digit rate of return. When you see that, you have to kind of compare it, and also make sure that it's telling the true story of what's actually going on. I actually have a client that I'm working with right now who has saved a lot of money, and he went to a financial advisor to say, hey, what should I do with this? And the plan that he proposed to him did not give him a lot of peace of mind. And so now we're working through a strategy that's going to give him the peace of mind that he needs. But if somebody is just arguing on rate of return as a whole, like I said, you got to make sure that whatever you're doing has a track record, that it's sustainable, it can continue, but also, is that really getting you the peace of mind that you need in your life? Because what most people have grown accustomed to is riding this roller coaster of emotions from statement to statement. It's up, great. It's down, and they just keep kind of riding that cycle, so to speak.
Rock, I think about, and Nate, I agree with you. And in fairness to the advisor, that's what he's been taught. That's what he knows. And it may work for many clients. But what he didn't ask is, why have you accumulated all this cash? What caused your behavior to save all of this money? And what he would have found out is that he's experienced losing it.
Pain. Yep.
And he doesn't want to experience that again. And so this is a great example of how insurance and people that are advising for market use complement each other if you have the right mindsets. And it has to start with what's best for the client, because that client could also say, I've doubled or tripled my money in the last 30 years. I'm all for the market. And he would have gotten lucky and hit the right, pin the tail on the donkey. But we can't hit everything with the same question. So the question really has to be, Brock, your favorite question, that 3-letter word, why? Why have you accumulated this capital? Why do you feel better being in a cash position? And what are you trying to accomplish next? And nowhere in there, Brock, are we talking about rate of return. I can't tell you the last time that we've come up with a strategy with anybody that they love and they want to implement where we talk about rate of return.
Well,
we talk about rate of control, peace of mind.
It also goes back to another question that we talk about, which is if you show up to retirement with $5 million in assets and no life insurance, or you show up to $5 million in retirement and $5 million in life insurance, death benefit, which one would you prefer? Well, they're always going to pick the one that has the bonus, has life insurance. And so, one thing that we can walk people through is, hey, what if your cost of life insurance, because we can break down the true cost of a policy, what if your cost of life insurance would be returned back to you many times over? Would it be better to show up? Would it be better? I'll use Trent's words. What we want to do is we want to match a guaranteed event, which is death, with a guaranteed contract, which is life insurance. And when your life insurance, your death benefit is equal or greater than your estate, that it gives you permission to enjoy your assets in a different way.
Well said. Well said. So when you hear somebody, this for anybody listening who's new to this, and you hear somebody saying, I get a great rate of return, they're playing by the rules that we've all been taught. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the real question is I would challenge everybody is, what does, retirement really mean to you? What's the goal? What are you shooting for? What are you trying to accomplish? And if you don't know, start having those conversations. And what Brock and Nate and I find often when we ask those quality questions is people are literally living day to day as if there's never going to be a snowstorm. And then when it happens, they don't know what to do. Instead of going, hey, I need to go ahead and buy that generator. I need to go ahead and make a plan to save up to put that Generac system in my cash flow plan. So the reality is that having a plan is better than not having one, and knowing that it's versatile and flexible enough to adjust when seasons of life adjust is really what we're talking about. Rate of return may play a role in that, but as Nelson said so well, being in control of the banking process will allow the best benefits long range. Guys, we appreciate your insight, your thoughts. Everybody, we don't ever take lightly that you spend time with us, that you spend time listening to us discuss these things. If you have any questions, always reach out. Let us know. My best call to action for anybody ever listening is reach out to me, Nate, or Brock, read Becoming Your Own Banker, and decide if what you're already doing is creating the life you want, or if you want to explore if there's other options. And if you don't mind being asked tough questions, then we're your guys. If you do, call somebody else. Have a great evening.